You are listening to Meet the Thriller Author, the podcast where I interview writers of mysteries, thrillers, and suspense books. I'm your host, Alan Peterson, and this is episode number 191. In this episode of the podcast, we'll be meeting Ryan Steck, who is a freelance editor and founder and editor-in-chief of The Real Book Spy, one of the best book review sites out there for thrillers. Ryan has been named an online influencer by Amazon and is a regular columnist at Crime Reads. His debut novel, Fields of Fire, came out on September 6th. It's a fast-paced thriller featuring elite Marine Raider Matthew Redd heading home to rural Montana where he uncovers a dark global conspiracy. It's a great debut and it's been widely praised by a who's who list of best-selling authors, including Jack Carr, C.J. Box, Mark Graney, and Kyle Mills, just to name a few. I had a great time talking with Ryan about his transition from book reviewer and influencer to being on the other side of the table as a novelist, and a whole lot more. I had a lot of fun talking with Ryan, so check out that interview. By the way, if you want notifications of when I release a new episode or to get notified of great deals on mystery and thriller books, sign up for my email list at thrillingreads.com/join. All right, here is my interview with Ryan Steck. Hey, everybody, this is Alan with Meet the Thriller Author. And on the podcast today, I have Ryan Steck, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of The Real Book Spy. He's also a freelance editor. And his debut novel, Fields of Fire, is publishing. We're recording this on September 6th. So today, congratulations, Ryan.
Hey, thank you so much, man.
So, you know, one of the first thing I wanted to ask you when scheduling for this interview is because, so you've been the go-to guy for all these thriller authors, The Real Book Spy, of course. Everybody knows who the Real Book Spy is. And now you're on the other side. Does that feel weird?
It's, yeah, man, it's crazy. I'll tell you a funny story. So, you know, Jack Carr, everyone knows who Jack Carr is.
Yeah, of course.
Number one New York Times bestselling author, The Terminal List, now a major number one TV show on Amazon Prime with Chris Pratt. I've known Jack since before Terminal List came out. So I go way back with him. Honored to call him a friend. I've interviewed him like 20 times. Like there was one of his books came out. We did an Instagram live every night together for like 2 weeks. So I've literally interviewed this guy like 20 times. And I did his podcast, Danger Close. And I realized like halfway through, I was asking him questions.
Yeah. So you fall back on it, huh?
I was like, I'm so used to being on the other side of this conversation, man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's wild. So before we get into your writing and your books, so how did you get into it? How did you become the Real Book Spy?
I wish, you know, you'd think after like 9 years, I'd have a good answer to that question. I don't. A lot of people have asked me it. I've been really blessed throughout my career. So I started as just a big fan. I'm a huge fan of Mitch Rapp and Vince Flynn. Mm-hmm. When Vince Flynn passed away, at that time, I was a really struggling first-year sports writer dealing with dyslexia. And I loved Vince Flynn because I had Googled when I was diagnosed as an adult with dyslexia. My doctor said, hey, just go read. It will help. And so I Googled dyslexic authors. I thought, hey, if you can be dyslexic and be an author, like you probably figured this out. And Vince Flynn came up. Been in love with him ever since. I think Mitch Rapp is my favorite character ever created. I think he's the best one ever created. And I was practicing to get back to sports writing. And a lot of people don't know when you're like writing sports columns, you watch the game and you're taking notes. So when I'm reading the Mitch Rapp books, I was taking notes and I ended up putting it all on the internet as a form. It really was just practice for me to get back to what I thought was my career. And I created this Mitch Rapp fan site. And when Vince passed away, Kyle Mills was hired to take over that series. And Kyle couldn't be more different. Vince didn't outline, just kind of wrote by the seat of his pants. Kyle is a hard outliner, 30,000 word outlines, very detailed. And he had said, you know, send me everything. Vince had all the notes, everything. Well, he didn't leave anything behind. And Simon & Schuster at the time, publicist extraordinaire David Brown at Atrium Mystery Bus on Twitter, he discovered what I had done in the Mitch Rapp world and connected Kyle and I. From there, I think other authors realized how much I loved this genre, these characters. The thing about being a big Vince Flynn fan is almost everyone in this business is, right? Mm-hmm. If you're like a fan of thrillers, everyone loved Vince. And so I bonded with a lot of people and it was talking with authors. So I started writing reviews for other outlets. and doing freelance reviews, and I was editing, and I was talking to so many author friends at the time. This is like 9 years ago. And they were like, there's never been like that one spot for thrillers. And the more I thought about it, I don't watch the Academy Awards every year, but I always look to see what won. Mm-hmm. I've never seen any of the movies that win Best Picture ever. I've never even heard of them most of the time. I like John Wick and Fast and the Furious, man, and Jason Bourne. And I like the movies that make $1 billion, Avengers, but that never win the awards. Thrillers are kind of that same thing in the literary world, And so I saw this space where there's so many thriller fans, and there was not this like one-stop shop for all things thriller. And I was just kind of dedicated to try my hand at creating that. And because I knew authors and had support and had already written a lot of reviews, it just sort of took off, man. I just got really lucky.
Okay, so you always wanted to be a writer then? You started as a sports writer, so has it always been in your DNA that you wanted to write?
Yeah, I think so. I loved sports. Like I love football. I love college and NFL, and I love thrillers. And when I'm passionate about something, I like to talk about it. And I don't have the radio voice, so I never thought that was me. I don't have the background to hop on TV and talk about it. But, print is a medium where I think anyone can thrive if you're passionate. So, yeah, I think that was something I always wanted to do.
So now tell us about your debut novel, The Fields of Fire. That's got to be so exciting. I haven't finished reading it, but I got an advanced copy from your publisher. So it's been really awesome. Tell us about it. How did that come together? How long has that been percolating in your head?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I hope you love it, man. This book has been with me for a long time. When I say a long time, Fields of Fire stars a character named Matthew Redd. He's a former Marine Raider. I first created him in 10th grade. I was in an English assignment. 10th grade English, we had a creative writing class, and we had an intern. And this intern, her name is Shay Vanderstelt Wentz. She's very near and dear to me now. Love her to death. But many years ago, she was new. She assigned us this writing assignment that was so open-ended. Like, it was like, write about whatever you want. You can swear, there can be violence, you can do anything you want. Now, we're in high school, man. I'm in 10th grade. I was like 15 at the time. No one ever told me I could do that. It was like, I'm cutting loose. And I remember I had friends that were just excuse me, they were just excited to like swear and write. And I was like, I took this seriously. Like, I was like, I need to go home and plan this story out. And I wrote about this teenage vigilante named Matty Redd, who protects his school from an attack. Turned it in, and I can literally still remember the next day. I didn't know this assignment would be peer-to-peer. So this poor kid named Trenton Hearn had to read my story out loud in class the next day. And he kept looking at the teacher like, should I be reading this? Because this feels dicey, Next day, I got called down to the principal's office, and the superintendent was there. My parents were there, and they were like, he went way overboard with this. Like, we have to suspend him. And I had those parents like, I got in trouble a lot in school for goofing off. I had these parents who are like, if you're in trouble at school, you're in trouble at home. This is the one time I wasn't in trouble at home. My parents were like, he did the assignment, right? And he actually wrote it very well. And they were like, well, it's way too much violence, way too much language. We can't not suspend him. So I got a week-long suspension. And the joke that I keep telling, that principal is now the principal for my children. I have 6 kids. And I told them, joke's on you. I got a week off school and a book deal out of this. So now in my adult life, I got thinking one day, about 6.5 years ago, what would Matty Redd be up to now? And I have a different perspective on life as an adult, as a father. What would his life look like? At the same time, I knew I wanted to write a book. I still freelance edit for everyone from New York Times bestselling authors right on down to hopeful debuts, people that reach out looking for help. I still edit, but I've covered like 2,000 books. I've edited a lot. And I kept thinking, what on earth could I write that wouldn't be close to anything I've worked on in any capacity? Because I never want to put a book out and people are like, oh, you must have got that from, whatever. And so it hit me one day that we never see Mitch Rapp. We never see Jason Bourne out west. We never see that. And I thought, that's where I'm going to send Redd. So my hero, Redd, all grown up now. He's been with me a long time. 6 years ago, I started the first draft. Redd is all grown up now. He's a former Marine Raider, like I said, who, when we first meet him, is still part of the military and is kicked out for reasons that he can't really control. Devastated, he goes back to his hometown of Wellington, Montana, for the first time in over a decade and finds his adopted father murdered. The details don't sit right with Redd. So the more he pokes around and investigates, the more information comes to light. And in doing so, he unearths a global conspiracy right in the heart of Montana that only he can stop.
Yeah, that's what I really loved about your book. It really blends like the action military thriller and like a good old crime thriller, which I love.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was a kind of a surprise. I thought it was going to be like a straight up, military type of political thriller, and but I love the criminal aspect of it. Is that something that you were a fan of as well?
Yes, and I'll tell you what's funny is I realized pretty quickly this was almost like a modern day Western when I was writing it. Now, I wrote this thing 6 years ago. I remember talking to my agent. I said, it's a modern day Western, but I'll never call it that publicly because Westerns aren't popular. No one likes that. Well, here we are today. When I signed my book deal 18 months ago, I had said to my publisher, it's really a modern day Western, but I'll probably never say that publicly. I start every interview now with like, so anyways, this is a modern day Western because Yellowstone is huge. 1883 is huge. Like the Western is like exploded. And I was like, I mean, if you look at the cover, we were trying to be subtle that it's kind of a modern day Western looking at the cover of Fields of Fire. In its heart, that's what it is, and I think Red encompasses that, this Wild West, this view that we have on the West, those corny lines that we see in every Western where they're like, call 911 and the protagonist says, I am 911. That line is tired, but it's true though, right? You go out to Montana and if you need backup, that's hours, maybe days, not minutes. And I thought that in of itself really heightens the stakes. You really are alone there. And you really have to figure out everything on your own and you're isolated. And I like that. I love action thrillers and political thrillers, but like I'm not Vince Flynn. He is my all-time favorite author, but I never thought I could write in that space. Ever. I would be terrified if someone asked me to write a book like that. My second favorite author is C.J. Box. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Oh, yeah. I love C.J. Box, yeah.
So Chuck is another guy I get to call a friend. And when I told my agent, again, 6 years ago, I said, I'm going to write a book that's going to be Vince Flynn meets C.J. Box. And I remember he said to me, like, what the hell's that look like? And I said, give me like a year. We're going to find out. I didn't know if I could pull it off, but that was what I was going for, was Vince Flynn meets C.J. Box. And I love that C.J. Box writes modern day Westerns that are also crime thrillers. And some of his are more political thriller, more action thriller. And I just like that variety. And I think Montana is the perfect place where you can get away with doing a little bit of all that.
You're hitting this new popularity at the beginning versus when it's going down.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Good timing, man. Good timing. So everyone's like, "Oh, Ryan, yeah, he's a smart guy. He's jumping into that because it's popular now, not knowing that you've been working on this for years."
I mean, I got lucky with that. I'm usually really bad with like headline beating. I don't know. So are you familiar at all with the Georgia Guidestones? Have you ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones?
No.
So, all right, Google them. And if you're listening to this, go back and Google it. It's this crazy thing that's shrouded in mystery that no one really knows where they came from. But it's like, just Google it. Trust me. It sort of feeds into the plot for Fields of Fire. So I don't want to give anything away. But I opened the book with the Georgia Guidestones originally. And just recently, they were blown up. And it was all in the news. And I called my agent very excited and was like, yes, like this is awesome for me, right? Because people are probably going to want interviews. Like, this is all in my book. And he was like, yeah, but you took that out. And I was like, no, I didn't take that. I would never do that. I left that in. And he's like, no, you took it out. And I literally ran here into my office and grabbed one of the galley copies, the early prints of Fields of Fire, and I opened it and it was gone. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me, man. That was like my shot to beat a headline, So yeah, it feels good to have arrived. I think we're going to see a lot of authors trying their hand at more modern day Westerns, even if they don't say that's what they're doing. I think you're going to notice a nuanced shift to people trying a little more because it is so popular right now.
Taylor Sheridan, right? He's the one who's doing those the movies, the Hell. I can't remember.
Hell and High Water?
Yes, yeah. Love that one. That was great.
Wind River?
Yes.
Yellowstone, 1883. The new one, I can't remember what it's called. It's a date, but it's got Harrison Ford, Helen Mirren. Like,
oh wow. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. We're seeing that explode. And so for me, yes, I was sitting there like, this could be good timing.
For a business, you're like, yes.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So now, so what about your writing process now? Do you outline? Do you write by the seat of your pants? What's your process like?
I'm not an outliner, but Kind of forced to be. And this, I say this jokingly, but it is true. So I told my agent, I signed a 2-book deal. Fields of Fire was done. I was going to write book 2. It's called Lethal Range, comes out next August, which is done and turned in and everything. But when I was going to sit down to write it, I said to my agent, I'm not going to do an outline. And he's like, well, the publisher needs an outline. And I was like, yeah, but I can't do one. I'm just going to write it and turn it in. And he's like, so you have a payment tied to turning your outline in. And I was like, oof, I'm going to have to write an outline.
Okay, I'm an outliner.
So let me figure that out. And it also, fully transparent makes me a hypocrite, because when I'm an editor, I tell all my clients we need to outline. And that's really so I can get involved early and I can look at the story and the plotting and raise red flags and, help along the way, the way I'm seeing it. But for myself, when I launched the Book Spy and I was editing full time, I was working 100 hours a week. And I'm not joking. There's like 7 years I never really had a day off, other than like maybe here and there. So I kind of worked myself to death, and I just work better when I'm constantly busy. However, I don't have all day to sit down and write. Still running the Book Spy, still editing. I'm now a Twitch streamer, by the way. So I stream on Twitch every night, which is growing a community there and getting to know readers and people. So here's what I do. I can't sit down at a computer to write unless I know exactly what I'm writing. So I write about 2 hours a night. My schedule, I usually get up really early. I do Book Spy stuff. I start reading a book. Lunchtime rolls around. I do editorial calls, stuff like that with clients. I'm thinking every day. I try to write a chapter a day, 2 hours, write 1,500 to 2,000 words. If you do that consistently, in 2 months, you have a first draft. 100,000 words is pretty standard length for a thriller novel. I think all day, what's the chapter I have to write? What's the scene I have to write? And I let it play in my head over and over until I get it just right. And then usually I stream from like 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. When I'm off stream, I usually write from like 10 to midnight, and then I go to bed. And from 10 to midnight, man, I just sit down and I let that scene play, and I just write it out as fast as I can. And then I literally go to sleep thinking about tomorrow. Like I usually will put myself in a corner, I've had a lot of calls with my publisher where they go, hey, Ryan, this is really great. We can't wait to see how you get read out of this jam. And I'm like, me too. I hope I can figure it out. And I wake up, I'm brushing my teeth in the shower, like thinking about it. What am I writing tonight? And so I spend all day on my other jobs, right? And thinking about this, and then 10 p.m. rolls around, I sit down and just start cranking it out. It doesn't have to be good. There's a saying in our industry, you can fix bad pages, you can't fix blank pages. So I know if I just get that first draft out in like 2 months, I can edit it for as long as I need. I can cut, I can add, I can tweak, I can make it better. But if I just get the story out, I can see it, I can move it around, I can do whatever I have to, and I can fix it. But I just got to get it out. And so that's my process. I don't think it will work for everyone, but I do believe that writing every day is essential.
Now, you mentioned though that your second book is coming out next year. Is that a different? Is this part of the series, or is that a different?
Yep.
Okay, so it is number 2. All right, awesome.
Second Matthew read book. We're really hoping that we get a renewal for more books and to keep this series going. My plan is to be writing Matthew read thrillers for a long time. I literally had sat down and sketched out like the first 7 books. So I kind of knew where the series was going, what's happening. I'm really proud of Fields of Fire. Like I really, really am. And so I feel bad saying this, but I'm so pumped up about next year's book. The first books are tricky because you're introducing characters, you're world building. 2, you're bringing readers back, hopefully. So they already have an understanding of the characters, the setting and all that, and you can just go for it. And Fields of Fire, again, very, very proud. I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm really proud of this book. But book 2, Lethal Range, is I really went for it. There's more action, more explosions, stuff like a little bit more of what you'd see from maybe like a Vince Flynn action-wise, but again, still right in the heart of Montana.
Oh, love that title, Lethal Range. Pretty cool.
Thank you.
And so, another writing question that I always have for my guests, because I'm Snoopy. So what do you use to write? You use Word or use some other software program?
Yeah, I use Word, and like I have clients that swear by other softwares and Scrivener and everything else, and that's fine. But I've been in the industry a long time, and all the publishers, everyone uses Word.
Yeah.
So it's like you can use whatever you want to write it, but like when it gets to me to edit it, it's going to need to be in Word. So I just work in Word. Would it be easier to write in other software programs? Potentially. But I think the learning curve for me, again, I just need to be able to sit down and write, get this scene out every day. And that's so for me, that's what I do. But, I have a lot of clients that write by hand and then put it in. Yeah, I do. I have a lot of author clients and author friends, by the way. Daniel Silva is another guy I absolutely love, him and his wife, Jamie Gangle. Daniel Silva is probably, in my opinion, one of the top 2 greatest spy novelists of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
He writes every draft by hand. Nelson DeMille writes by hand. Like, it's crazy. I could never do that. So to me, like, they're like the ones that are like, I feel like people look at me, they're like, you still use Word? And I'm like, listen, Daniel Silva's writing by pencil and paper. Okay. So I'm with the times. Let's at least acknowledge that. But yeah, I've played around with Scrivener a little bit. I think there's tools and other programs that could help newer writers, but for me, I just use Word.
And what about the research? Do you put in a lot of research? What's your research process like?
Yeah, a lot, because I don't know everything I'm writing. Thankfully, being a book spy, being an editor I have a lot of connections. I had a pretty healthy Rolodex of people to call on. I already said Jack Carr. I bothered him a lot for details. I'm not former military. So, all the time I'm texting, these people like, what gun would he use here? And then I have to go research that, man, and same thing with, I live in Michigan. This series is set in Montana. So the amount of research, and I'm going back soon. The amount of research for that is overwhelming at times. I try really hard if I know most of the story, I try to get the research done before I start writing, because I do think it's really hard if you're writing and you're like, oh, shoot, I got to research this. I just think that kind of throws your mojo off. So I do try to do the research ahead of time. But yeah, there's no way around the research. I do think that's what separates a lot of people that want to be authors and then people that got published is you can write really good stuff, but it's not quite accurate. It's not quite where it needs to be, or it doesn't pass, the authenticity test. I'll be honest with you, Alan, I didn't know I passed that test until CJ Box blurbed Fields of Fire on the cover. And when he called it a terrific sense of big sky country, I was like, oh, we did it. No one knows that area like Chuck Box. So things like that. But yeah, the research is just, you can't cheat it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say too, I really love your cover. What kind of, do you have any input on that, or how does that work out? I know that it varies with publishers and stuff, but
yeah, I mean, it was funny. When we sat down to do the cover discussions for Fields of Fire, my publisher, they're so great to me, Tyndale House. I love everyone there, and they're so supportive and great. And they were like, Ryan, you've worked on so many books. You probably thought and know exactly what you want this to look like. And I was like, yeah, actually, I really haven't thought about it, to tell you the truth. Like, that probably sounds bad, and even worse, I don't know what I like. I just know what I don't like. Like, I'm not visual enough, like, from an artistic standpoint, to know what will look good. And so I sit in these meetings with the design team and I just throw crazy stuff at them. And they're like, well, how do you think that will turn out? And I'm like, I don't know, look forward to seeing it, God bless them, because they came back with, like, the guy who does my cover, his name is Dean at Tyndale, and he gave out like 5 samples. And the way it works is you take those samples and you pick the one you like, and then you can start tweaking and changing. And it's like, we all agree this is the direction. And with Fields of Fire, it took shape pretty quickly, man. We had some discussions. Everyone sort of agreed the color scheme made sense for Red. The character name is Matthew Red. Mm-hmm. Fields of Fire, you think of Red. So that one was easy. I wanted mountains on it, that wasn't on it originally. Wanted to play up the sky a little bit, but like very simple things. The cover process was so painless because they're all so good at their jobs that it made me, all I just did was like sit there and like, yeah, I like that. I don't, it was so simple. I will tell you though, and again, I hate to sound like I'm minimizing Fields of Fire, but the cover for Lethal Range that we're going to be unveiling real soon is like absolutely blows me away. So they nailed it again. But you could see behind me, I have the cover on the wall, and I really like it, man. I think it turned out great. I wish I could like say, oh, that was the conception I always had, like from the beginning. No, not at all. That was all the art people at Tyndale.
Ryan, I know you're super busy today with your pub day, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. One question I always ask of my guests, and you're a good one because you've been an editor and you've reviewed thousands and thousands of books. So, what advice do you have for aspiring writers, thriller writers that are listening to the podcast?
Write every day. People say write what you know. I don't necessarily believe. If that were true, I'd be writing books about writing books. Write what you want to read, because if you're having fun writing it, people will have fun reading it. That's the thought process. Because if you're not having fun writing it, no one will have fun reading it. Beyond that, work hard, write every day, because the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then if it's something you're really serious about, and this is not like a plug for myself, but anyone, get an editor, get someone, because you can never judge your own work. I can't, I'm a full-time editor and a critic, and I still don't know if my stuff is good. I rely on my agent, John Talbot, who was also an editor early on in Clancy's career, and my editor at Tyndale, Sarah Risky. I can't judge. When I finished book 2, I was really excited, but I was like, I don't know if this sucks or not. Like, you need someone else to tell you. Your brain will always read your own work the way you meant to write it. You will never know. And I do this all the time as an editor, man. People send me stuff, and there's absolutely no visual descriptions. And I'll ask them, like, what's this setting look like? And they'll explain it, and it's beautiful. And I'm like, why is that not in there? And it's because our brain so sees it in our mind that we just sort of gloss over it when we're writing it. And you need someone to pull the best out of you. Like, you really, really do. So I would really encourage people, if you want to be an author, you want to get published, find someone that has experience. And I still edit. And by the way, people can always reach out to me at ryan@therealbookspy.com, and I can recommend others too. But find someone that knows what they're doing a little bit, that can help you in that process, and then help you in the query process, because getting an agent is really hard these days. And have someone that knows how to make your query stand out, and then just don't quit. Keep going.
All right. Well, that's good advice, Ryan. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. And again, congrats on your debut novel. Real exciting.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Thank you for listening to Meet the Thriller Author. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with one of your favorite writers of mysteries and thrillers. Or if this episode's guest is new to you, I hope you give their books a chance. Helping listeners discover new authors and books is one of the coolest outcomes of doing this podcast. As always, you can head over to thrillerauthors.com to sign up to my Thrilling Reads email list. That way you won't miss out on any great deals in thriller and mystery books. You can also check out all the links and resources in the show notes for this episode over at thrillerauthors.com. And also, please do subscribe to this podcast if you haven't done so already, and leave a rating and review wherever it is that you're listening to this show. If you have done that already, I thank you. I really do appreciate your support. For my other links to my author website, social media haunts, and more, check out thrillingreads.com/links. All my links will be on that page. So that's it for this episode. See you next time, and stay safe out there.